inequality. Just a comparison of how it looks with respect to the US. It's 1/3 the size of the US in land mass, or even lesser. I think overall it's about 7th in size, but then the population is about 3 times bigger. If you are about 300 million, you're at least past a billion, so maybe even 4 times bigger. Just a population breakdown by religion. The majority of the population there are Hindus, about 80%, so in a billion that makes about 800 million of them. Just a perspective to see where the other religions are, and something that sometimes strikes as odd to people when I explain this is that Buddhism came from India, and the number of Buddhists there are hardly about 10 million of them. So some people have asked me, like, what's the big deal? I mean, what's the deal? I mean, if Buddhism has come from a country, you would expect more people following that religion there. But those are some of the questions I'll probably be able to answer as we go on. Class system, as you know, in Western world or in other world, is a financial system where some are haves and have-nots. You have a haves and have-nots. And haves, they have money. Have-nots are the poor people of the society. And then as the societies grew and modern societies came about, you also have middle class section, which are, I don't know if they have or have not, because some things they can do, some things they can buy, some things they can't. So, but that is an economic structure. But caste system is a birth-based system. It's by birth. With a class system, eventually somebody who is poor can become rich. Then they could move into the richer society. They could start living in the Hamptons, whatever. But with the caste system, because it's based on birth, you stay where you are, irrespective of what you earn, irrespective of what education you may gain, or irrespective of where you move, even if you move out of India. So what is caste system? It is a society based on the concept that some people are by birth born mighty, born intellectual, born great. And there are some people by birth who are born filthy. By virtue of just the first statement, it doesn't make a big difference. I'm sure royalty is born into royalty, they are great or whatever. But the problem here is the society doesn't give a mechanism for people to interchange. The mighty or the great don't have to prove anything to be mighty. Once born in an upper caste, you're just an upper caste, and by virtue of that, you get social privileges, you get social acceptance, and you are best in the society. And by virtue of being born as the low caste, irrespective of what education you gain, how much money you gain, socially your value is always less. So that's where the biggest problem with the caste-based system is that you don't have any mobility of lower caste into upper caste or upper caste into lower caste. So how did this caste-based society come about is where I wanted to take you guys next. So we'll have to go back a couple of, or at least 3-4 millennia back. And at that point, you come into this picture of India. The most, the green highlighted thing is the Indus Valley civilization. Pretty much what we have is the green section, which is the Indus Valley civilization. The river's name is Indus Valley civilization, and you have cities developed there. And this was about 4,000 years ago. And at this very same time, or very close to this, we have Aryans who are from the Central Asia, Ural Mountains region migrating into India. Some people use the word invading India, but I see that as wrong. They never came about and invaded whole of India, they migrated. And I also use the word migrated because they did it in phases. It was not always the one Aryan group which said, let's march into India and overtake it. There were batches of Aryans who came into India, and they also brought along with them the language of Sanskrit, and also their system of living, their gods, which I'll explain as like Vedic gods and stuff. So this is what happened around that time when the Indus Valley civilization was there. Then the first period immediately after that is classified as the Vedic period. Pretty much if you read the Vedas, apart from explaining how the caste system came, one of the things they explain is that there was plenty of fire-based sacrifices, meat, animals, and intoxicants called soma. Pretty much they had a good time back then, a lot of good time. And at that point, if you look at the main old Vedas, apart from a few sections, most of them only talk about three distinct sections of society. You have the Brahmins, the priests and the intellects, pretty much, or at least that's what they were classified as. And then the Kshatriyas, the rulers and the warriors, and the common folk, merchants, farmers, laborers, and everybody. And this actually doesn't seem to be too far-fetched, because if you look at the historic societies, you pretty much could classify societies into this form. There were priests, there were warriors, rulers, soldiers, and everybody else was common. There was no need for them to distinguish the societies any farther. And this is one of the hymns which I picked, which actually shows that even the hymn itself talks about only three caste systems. Now, the next, it followed on till we get to the pre-Buddhist period, but by then we see that there is another section of caste added over here. That was the Sudras. And if you look out here, the Sudras pretty much were excluded from anything that was given to the other three groups, which meant that they were being treated now as a second-class citizens over here. And people have various explanations of Sudras, and if you have ever heard, the most common explanation is that the cosmic being called Purusha was from whom the castes generated. So from his mouth came the Brahmins, from his shoulders came the Kshatriyas, from his thighs and the navel region came the commoners, and the Sudras came from the feet. So by virtue of where they have come from, they are considered as lowly. But however, if we look into further details, it will come across through different books of the Hindus that Sudras were not actually the Indians whom Aryans conquered. Remember, Aryans came in batches. Whenever people go as a barbarian batch into any country, first thing they do is they fight with the people, theirs. Then they fight amongst themselves because they are coming in different batches, and eventually they settle. But what has happened over here is Sudras were a group of the Aryan communities of the solar race, and they were of the Kshatriya Varna. So they were actually up here, but then they were demoted over here. And the question is why? If you look at other Hindu books, there is a story of Vashishta and Vishwamitra, a huge feud. Vashishta is a Brahmin sage. Vishwamitra is a Kshatriya sage. And what we can see in this story is that these people are always fighting for supremacy. And I think it's common across history that there is always a fight between, a struggle of power between the priesthood and the royalty. So this is what this emerged into, and this is where we figured out that the Brahmins actually were able to finally trounce the Kshatriyas who revolted against them or who wanted superior power than the Brahmins. Because Brahmins as a group were able to pick apart those Kshatriyas who were questioning their supremacy, and they pushed them down to be the Sudras. Now if these guys were, you'll later on realize that today 50% of Indian population is Sudras. And the question that arises then is, how can just a group of Kshatriyas who came as Aryans become 50% of the population? And the answer to that question is, as Hinduism and as the Brahminic ideology went across and expanded into India, they took people into these three groups, or into at least these two groups, those who accepted the theory. Those who they didn't care about, or those who fought against their supremacy, were all being started pushing into the Sudra group, which is where the numbers grew bigger and bigger, to the extent that now you have about 500 million of them who are not considered as twice born. They are not allowed to make any sacrifices. They are not allowed to read Vedas and everything, which actually is the way to get social stature in the Hindu religion. With still, where I'm trying to go here is, I'm trying to increase the caste system over here. To begin with, we only had 3 castes, and now we have the 4th one. But what India is now also struggling, and what the external world knows a lot about, are the Untouchables, or the Dalits. And if I have shown you anything here, so far, they are not here. So what happened from here to the next stage of Indian history that changed this? Well, the period here I'm naming is the pre-Buddhist period. So what comes next is Buddha. Buddha needs to come next, in my slide at least. So Buddha comes over here, and before he was ever before he ever preached a religion and became a religious leader, Buddha was first and foremost a social revolutionary. He questioned the authority of the Vedas, and he questioned the authority of the caste system that was put in place. So pretty much, when immediately after Buddhist period, emperors and others were inspired by his religion, and if you see, whole of India pretty much became Buddhist. And if Buddhism doesn't talk to caste system, so pretty much what we can then agree is that caste system pretty much got disappeared from the common life of people. That doesn't mean to say that you don't have the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, or some rulers who are still want to follow Hindu religion, but overall Brahmanism took that social culture of caste system out. So at this point, which is why I have not put anything over here which shows caste system. But then a unique thing happens in the history of India, which looks common to other civilizations, but it was also very uncommon. The grandson of Ashoka. Ashoka was the Buddhist emperor who actually had all of this under his control. But then the grandson of Ashoka, his name is Brihadatta, is then assassinated by his commander-in-chief. Overall, in the big scheme of things, it seems normal. A ruler getting assassinated by his commander-in-chief, a coup, and then he takes over, looks very simple. But what we need to realize is, who are these two people, what faiths do they believe in? The emperor was the grandson of Ashoka, who was a Buddhist emperor, and he himself followed the Buddhist philosophy. However, the commander-in-chief who assassinated Ashoka's grandson was a Hindu Brahmin. So now, it's not just a coup, it's now a twist of society, and society changes from here. At which point, we go to the next slide. So this is the new state under the Gupta dynasty. And Gupta dynasty is what was started by Pushyamitra Sunga, the commander-in-chief who assassinated the Buddhist empire. So from here again, there was rigorous Hindu religion, rigorous caste system followed again. Which brings us to the point of when untouchables start appearing. The question here is, there were a lot of Buddhists back here, and suddenly the state converted to Hinduism. There was forcible conversion of Buddhists back into Hinduism, or there was an open declaration that you either convert or you are not one of us. Which is where those people who are not one of us then start becoming untouchables. And also one of the other things that they keep doing, the untouchables keep doing, is not only do they stay Buddhist, or rather than not stay Buddhist, they don't assimilate back into Hindu religion, they also continue eating beef. Untouchables in India eat beef. Hindus, even considering Sudras, don't eat cow meat. But untouchables, who are about 150 million, they either eat meat, they deal in meat, they are the people who skin cows, they are the people who take dead bodies or dead animals out of the villages and stuff. So that's where you get untouchables. So this was around 400 or 500 BC. Then what happens? Muslim rule comes into India. But I have not explained any further about the caste system over here, because they come in and they just replace the rulers. They don't disturb the social fabric of the society. They just come as rulers, they build these empires. I'm sure they persecuted some of those Brahmins or some of those Hindus who were opposed to them. But overall, they finally were able to intermingle to the extent that in the courts of Shah Jahan, who built Taj Mahal, and even his grandfather Akbar, there were ministers of Hindu ministers. But just want to clarify that when I say Hindu ministers, there were ministers who were Brahmin, who are of the Brahmin caste. So effectively, they were the ministers, they were the landlords, they were the tax collectors, at least the Brahmins. And they didn't care who the ruler was, because they still had a huge privilege over there. So the caste system never changed much. It's just that the rulers changed. Then comes the British rule in the course of history. Something different happens with the British rule, which doesn't happen with any prior invader, like the Muslim invaders. By the time British rule comes, though they are an imperialistic country, they do come with some modern ideas of the society, like democracy, equality, fraternity, or at least inequality to the extent that we are white people, you're all brown. I don't care whether you're a Brahmin, Sudra, Kshatriya, or whatever. You're all brown to us, you're all second-class citizens. So there, they kind of equate all Indians and push them down. And what they also do is that they do figure out that some people are being treated as untouchables. They do make some classifications that they see in Hindu society. So at this point, this figure here, not many of you guys may know, he is Dr. Ambedkar. He was born about 1980s. He was an untouchable and he fought for the untouchables. He was able to, because of the British rule, get some education. He came to Columbia University over here in New York, also studied in Oxford University in London, and then he went back to India and he always fought against the Brahmins because they were suppressing the untouchables, and he also was able to procure some provisions through British government and also made some provisions in the Constitution of India to help untouchables gain some foothold because they were depressed. Pretty much you could relate it to affirmative action here, which you have for the colored people. But he made sure that untouchables were recognized as a separate group and also that there were some reservations given to them. So this is Dr. Ambedkar. He was able to make some reforms and reservations. Then comes independent India. How does Indian society look today? Indian society looks like this today. On the top of the system, the social order. In the social system, the top is the Brahmins, the next are the Kshatriyas, the rulers, then you have the common people, the merchants, the farmers and the laborers, and then you have other backward caste people. This is how we now classify Sudras, we call them as backward caste. And then finally you have untouchables who are still 15% and they are the low caste, and there are still issues where they are not assimilated completely into the society and are discriminated against that in different areas of the society. I think I want to stop over here and see how far you have assimilated things, or if I'm going too fast, too slow, or any questions so far? Yes, please.
Are there laws now against some of these castes? Untouchability?
Against, yes. Indian Constitution does have laws against untouchability. However, they are seldom implemented. Not sure how many of you have been in the Capitol building in Madison. If you ever walk into the governor's office over there, on the ceiling you will see a saying which says, "The will of the people is the law of the land." Pretty much what the people want is the law of the land. So overall, all of Indians, or at least those who are in power, want to keep caste system, so that's what works. The constitution, the books, the rules, and the implementation is just thrown out the window. So you have issues where untouchables are persecuted for asserting their social status or asserting the rights that are given to them through constitution, because everybody in the executive council or the legislature, the 4 pillars of democracy are not under their control, are not favorable to implementing those laws. So you have laws, but they're not implemented. How does the whole rest of the world see India? I am here as a 90 person. I actually come from the Dalit community. Dalit is another name for untouchables. So you will see educated Dalits sparingly. But the problem is not about education or earning money. The problem is the social status that I get when I go back to India. Can I dwell like how the upper caste live? And that's not easy. Even though I may have money, I won't be sold a house in a place where upper castes live. Like if a community is owned, if a set of houses are owned by Brahmins, they would never sell that house to me. The other thing is, how about marriage? I'm educated, I'm married actually, my wife is back there, but if I go back, if I were not married and if I go back to India, just because of my education and my whatever I do, how I live, I wouldn't be able to get a bride based on how I live. The first question would be asked is, what caste are you from? There is a saying like, everything is fine, but the caste is not right. That's where it ends. Yeah, yes sir.
So if they don't know you, how do they know which caste you belong to?
Okay, this is, what people know is what group they belong to and who is in that group. Where you are, I don't care. You are a Dalit, untouchable, or you are a Brahmin, I don't know. If I am a Kshatriya, I know who my folks are. And when I seek a bride or a groom for my kids, I look into my connections to find a spouse. I never talk to you, so I don't have to know that you're not, all I have to know is that you're not in my group. And all I have to do is reach out to figure out who my group is. So a question that is usually asked to me is, how do people in India know what caste each one is from? The answer is you need to foremost know only your group, and that will suffice, because based on mutual exclusion, everybody keeps to their. Don't look at Indian society as a university or a huge school, an international diverse school. Look at it as a middle school. I have seen some, after I have come here, I have watched Wonder Years, Mean Girls and all that. all you need to know is that I, as a brown kid, if I go into one of these schools in Waukesha, Tosa or anywhere, I will see a sea of white kids with braces, freckles, and for me, as far as I know, all of them are white kids. Why are they fighting amongst themselves? But the kids, by virtue of growing from nursery to grade 8, 10, whatever, they know where they belong. You have a group of football players, you have a group of cheerleaders, you have a group of nerds sitting there, you have a group of nobodies. All they know is that they can't move across those days. What happens if somebody picks their bags, packs it up and goes to a different city? Would they not know them? The question here is, I'll go back again to middle school. Let's say in a middle school I was being bullied. What you're asking of me is to pick up my books, clean up my desk, locker, and go to a different middle school. But my question is, how long will I be not known there as a nerd? Let's say I'm a nerd. I can walk down the corridor there the first day, but eventually when the bell rings, I need to go and sit in a class. Then where do I sit? Do I sit in the first bench, second bench? Do I associate myself with the, who do I date? Who do I sit with? Then the cafeteria, where do I sit? By virtue of just me sitting somewhere, I will give out who I am. And then you also need to realize that this is a birth-based system. So eventually in this middle school, and a Friday evening comes when there is a PTA. So maybe a PTA session. So maybe I posed off as a football player in the new school and I was able to throw to, punt or whatever. But eventually my parents go to the parent-teacher association and they are dressed like whatever. They give away who I am. At which point the consequences of lying are actually consequence of not telling who you are and trying to pose another one could get very serious. You could be beaten, killed, and all that stuff. An example is, there was a guy in Delhi who moved over to Mumbai. He was a Dalit, he was an untouchable. He moved over to Mumbai and he started a street shop, a street vending food stuff. If you have ever seen India, you just have a thing, you make omelets, whatever there. Chaat is what we call it. So he was doing great. He kept sending money back to Delhi and everything or whatever. Eventually it so happened that this guy's relation or somebody from that village where he migrated from went down to Mumbai, and while walking down the street, hey, what are you doing here? And then by virtue of him talking up and down the street, he mentioned to the other street vendors that he was an untouchable from Delhi. Pretty soon he had to close shop because nobody would buy anything from him. Nobody would associate with him or anything. So, and then he had to pretty much close shop. If not physical harm done, it was a financial harm. He had to close shop and go back to his home village. So there are consequences of trying to pose as somebody else. Not only lying, not speaking could also land you into trouble. But how does the rest of the world see India? I have a small clip from President Obama over here as to how he talked. We'll skip that. But pretty much in his speech in the parliament, he talked about these points. And I'm taking him as an example as how the outside world. So pretty much he says that everyone in India can fulfill their God-given potential. They have a constitution that protects the rights, and then every person deserves security, dignity, education, work, and the ability to give their children a better future. So pretty much what he is saying is that India is now an equal society. But is that right, and is that the only version is what I want to question. What is the real India? Whenever we talk about caste system and untouchability, people are, when you guys introduce, there is this.
Governments are defining themselves very.
So whenever people talk about caste system and stuff, foreigners or non-Indians are always told that caste system is a thing of the past, which we can also see from how President Obama talked about Indian society. Indians do two things when you ask about caste system and untouchability with them. One is they put it in the past. they say that, hey, you're talking 50 years old stuff. You're talking pre-independent stuff. Then the other thing they claim is that you can see only caste system in like a remote rural village which has not even seen the light of the, they don't know internet, they don't know light bulbs and stuff. So are these correct? By virtue of saying that it was a thing of the past and a thing of rural India, what they're contrasting is that you don't see it in modern India, you don't see it in the cities, you don't see it among educated people because they are now beyond caste system. So I want to see if this takes us, this gives us a different perspective of it.
I've done it.
Jawaharlal Nehru University is the biggest, most technologically advanced university in India. So I'm taking that as an example to show if caste system exists in this such a huge university. If a university is supposed to be the future of the country and the representation of the most liberated, educated people, then let's see if
I feel it's on basically on Dalit feminism in Maharashtra, how the Dalit women are defining themselves.
I want to make sure that
Very first experience of JNU, I had a friend in my first semester, and we were a very good friend. And she was unwell. I used to look after her. You know, after a few days, she came to know I'm a Dalit girl. So she said to me in Marathi, "Oh, I'm a Brahmin girl. You know, मेरा धर्म भ्रष्ट हो गया. तुमने मेरी सेवा की है." This was my first experience. And there's a friend of mine and who had a Brahmin friend. And he has a kind of this thing, oh, I got a Dalit roommate, so he has done a kind of partition, so he doesn't want to see a face of a Dalit boy early in the morning. And this thing's still going on and it's not coming out also. Lots of Dalit girls who were junior to me tried to approach me when they were facing a kind of discrimination among roommates, and I do have a, so when I used to try to sort it out, you know, these kind of problems, I find that beyond the point, but I find that Dalit girl, which is my observation in institution like JNU, they don't want to come out and say that I'm a Dalit. A friend of mine, should we move? Has been proposed by a Brahmin guy. When he realized she's a Dalit girl, first reaction was, oh, she don't look like a Dalit because her features are like a Brahmin. Because, and then over a period of time, when you realize she's a Dalit, the first reaction, I can't marry. I think we also have to think also, the self-dignity and self-respect is much more important than anything else.
There were a few things here which I was also trying to explain, which you can see over here. What happens if you move to a different city and people don't know that you are a Dalit or an untouchable? Yeah, for the time being it will work, you can move around as if you're not. But the moment they know that you are a Dalit, and it will come out, believe me, that you are an untouchable, things change. In Chicago, in 2007, a father brought some gasoline to the apartment where his daughter was staying, with whom she had married. And as far as the father was concerned, the girl married somebody from a lower caste. He was also an Indian, so an Indian girl married an Indian boy, but the Indian boy was a lower caste, so the dad did not take it well. So he burned the whole apartment down. So his daughter died, the son-in-law died, and they had, the girl was pregnant, and they also had a 3 or 4 year old daughter. So what I'm trying to show here is that by virtue of this system being part of the religion, Indians will take it wherever they go. Which is one of the reasons why Indians don't gel well with any other groups or societies that they run into. They can become friends superficially and everything, but when it comes to actually forming relationships and stuff, they pull back. Because as far as they are concerned, their religion teaches that they got to marry somebody in their own caste. And another thing which I can prolong on this is, they also maintain this, marrying within the caste, by giving their parents the power to pick the spouse. It's both ways. Parents want that power to pick the spouse, and the children give that option, or they don't have another option. How do they maintain caste system? And the answer here is arranged marriages. If you have ever wondered why Indians still in this modern society or modern world still favor arranged marriages, it is because it will maintain the caste system. That's the only way you can maintain caste system. If you let the young boys here pick young girls from this college, who knows who they'll pick? The first person they like, the person they meet, interact with more, the person with whom they have the same things that they do. So you have no control if you let young people pick a spouse for themselves. But if you give that authority to the parents, they can have a list of criteria through which they can run, and almost always the first criteria on top is caste. So when you ever have Indian friends and talk to, hey, yeah, I'm getting arranged marriage, and you probably have some questions, and you at one point stop because you don't want to push that person too far. The answers that Indians will give is, my parents know the best. I'm going to marry an Indian boy whom my parents will pick. The traditions match and everything. But if you dig further in, you will know that when they say my parents are going to pick an Indian, they're not picking all the Indian eligible boys. Within that, they carve out a section. Caste picks the spouse. In arranged marriages, the parents pick the spouse. What are they looking for? They're looking for caste first, then everything else. Is he educated? Is he everything? If the caste matches, then I'll go to the next level. If the caste doesn't match, I don't care if the boy is educated or not, or if the girl is educated. I don't care. There are some drawbacks of arranged marriages. There are dowry deaths. It's a little different than the dowries in Africa. In this case, the girl's family pays the guy's family. There is forced widowhood. Once a widow, forever a widow in India. Doesn't matter what your age is. Because it's an arranged marriage, why would any parent pick a girl who is widowed? And also, a widow is attached a lot of stigma. Pretty much the death of the husband is blamed on the girl. It's because of you. You brought all that bad luck. That's why we lost our son. So nobody ever wants to marry a widow. Because arranged marriages require a lot of dowry. People kill their babies before they're born. People use an ultrasound machine to figure out what the sex of the baby is, and if it's a girl child, they abort it. That doesn't mean that this is a practice that has come in vogue only after ultrasounds have come. Before there were ultrasound, you would let the girl be born and then just dump her in the well. And there are instances of this where a village has been found and all you can find in that well are female babies. One of the other reasons that Indians give when they talk to arranged marriages is that, oh, our divorce rate is so low. We have a 99% success rate. Only 1% of Indians ever divorce. The question that I ask is, does staying married amount to a successful marriage? How many of you have ever fallen in love, and how many of you have broken up? Which was easier? If these kids who are forced, not forced, whatever, either they are forced or they willingly accept arranged marriages or whatever, the point here is they are agreeing to an arranged marriage, which means that they are renouncing their right to pick a spouse. If these are the kids we are talking about, how can I say that these are the kids who will fight and say, now I'm done with this marriage, I want a divorce? What guts do they have? So I don't buy the argument that India has only 1% divorce rates, so arranged marriages are great. And also, what is the freedom that the women has? Like I said, what respect would a divorced woman get? Because everybody's arranged marriage in school pick a divorced woman because she's not used. Sorry, but something like that. And also, what independence does she have? Even in modern countries, divorce is a very new scenario only because the woman is becoming more and more independent. So how independent are Indian women? Because as far as a man is concerned, he can stay in a marriage and still do whatever he wants because he's powerful, he travels, he can do other stuff. It's the women folk who suffer more. So in India, when people stay married and are not divorcing, you need to see, can a woman even ask for a divorce and live on her own? Will her parents accept her? Will the society accept her? Does she have the means? So what purpose does an arranged marriage serve? As far as I am concerned, it's the means to maintain a caste-based society, no other means. But it is a powerful need because it is dictated by the religion. So what do you see outside India? Because Indians carry caste system because they take their religion everywhere. I gave you a small example where there was an intercaste marriage where the father didn't agree to it, but there was an honor killing in the US.
So in the caste system, everyone is Hindu?
Yes.
I mean, so they would never marry across religious lines?
Very good question. What we need to realize is the answer is no. You would see some people marrying across castes, but across religions, but there is a reason why. Who were the people who converted to these other religions that came into India? They were Indians, and at one point they must be practicing Hindu religion, or they must be one or the other caste. So to the extent that all other religions which are now in India have also been tainted by caste system. So within Christians, you will see a Brahmin Christian, a Dalit Christian. So let's look at Dalits here. So there is a Dalit Hindu and a Dalit Christian. When these people are ready to marry, though they are different by religion, by caste they are the same because they are all untouchable, say they will intermarry. But for a Dalit Hindu to say that, hey, I'm educated, I'm rich now, I can buy a house in Hamptons, why don't you give me a Brahmin girl? No. Stay where you are, man. You may be rich, but that's because of our grace, or that's because you did something, but I don't care pretty much. As far as I'm concerned, when I need to choose a spouse for my kid, I will pick another Brahmin. Here. What is the road ahead for us? Because I'm painting a poor picture. After 60 years or 70, 60 years? Yeah, 47, 60 years of independence, India still has 150 million people who are deemed untouchable. Some of them are educated and coming out, but overall the society still treats untouchable and untouchables as the low caste. So what is the option here? If caste system is what is mandated by religion, you can clean up religion, or you can just go to a different religion. So Dr. Ambedkar's picture, which I showed earlier, he researched religion, he wanted to help the untouchables, he put legal rules and everything, and he figured out that by the time those legal rules, financial and economic rules kick in, you could always denounce Hindu religion and pick a different religion. And he put Buddhism as the main religion which he would suggest people to go to, because in the beginning, Buddha was against, it was a religion which came against the social order of that time, which was caste system. So he said religious conversion might be a biggest thing, because as soon as you're a Buddhist, you have to be a Hindu to agree to this social structure. When you are not a Hindu, I don't care if you're a Brahmin or not. I'm a Buddhist, that's all I care. Only if I stay in Hindu religion is when I have that social order. There are reservations similar to affirmative action given to Dalits, so they should take advantage of it. It's been 60 years, we have not been able to take much of it because Dalits and lower castes are further subdivided into subcastes, so they are not able to form a consolidated whole. Even though you have 150 million untouchables, varying by region, varying by where they live, and varying by their occupation, they treat each other differently. So if I am somebody who deals with fishes or stuff, I'm an untouchable who deals with fishes. If there is somebody who's working leather or something, he's a different kind of untouchable. We still don't see eye to eye. So untouchables themselves are a divided lot. Otherwise 150 million is a huge number. Win allies in the struggle for human dignity. As we are making sure that we gain political, economic, and financial strength, people like us are opening it up, making it a bigger issue, and trying to gather international support. So, this is one of the things I'm doing. What can you do? The first and foremost thing you can do is just question the monolithic version of Indian society. Vedas came, they dictated, this is how we are living. Why do you want to believe that? 150 million untouchables, don't they have any history? But then how will it come to you? I mean, what about arranged marriages? When you hear arranged marriages and say, yeah, well, I don't know, Indians always have arranged marriages. Why don't you want to question that? Why don't you have a scientific temper behind it? Why don't you ask other questions like, Indians revolted against Britishers. Why didn't they group together and ever revolt against any prior invader? Muslims are considered the biggest threat to India. Hindus and Muslims always fight. But if they are such a big threat, why didn't Indians all get together, all Hindus get together and fight against the Muslim rule? But why did they fight against the British rule? Remember, Muslims came, but they didn't change the social fabric. In any country, the revolution starts with the intellectuals. They are the ones who first feel oppression and they say, no, these guys who have come are suppressing us, we need to fight against them. But when it was Islamic rule, Brahmins didn't care. They were the ministers, they were the landlords, they were the tax collectors. They felt the initial pressure, but then later on there was no reason for them to revolt. They were the reign was loose. But when Britishers came, they said all Indians are equal to us. You're all brown-skinned, we are all going to treat you as a second-class citizen. So that was not acceptable by Brahmins. So that's where they revolted. So ask these questions and figure out, is Taj Mahal the only thing in India to see? What else is there? Where are these untouchables? Why don't we see untouchables out here? Why don't untouchables, aren't there untouchables in America? If they are there, why don't they come out? Just start questioning and see if India has just one version of history, or are there different versions? Question why there is no Buddhism anymore in India. How can a land where Buddha grew, preached Buddhism, doesn't have a population of Buddhists? Question what India's contributions are to the world. Because caste system is a confining situation. As much as the Dalits are being oppressed, I don't think the Brahmins are liberated either. Because they have to maintain this caste system, there is no mobility. America is so great because it's a melting pot. You are an Irishman coming in, you have a great idea, I'll take it and build it. I will make money, you can also make money. But in this case, India is confined. If you are a Dalit and you have a great idea, I don't care. I only want a great idea from my caste member to help him. So this caste system is an issue for everybody. And eventually, which is why you don't see many contributions from India in any field in the recent past. We don't have an Oscar winner ever. We don't have any Olympic medals. I'm talking everything. We don't have any medical advancement. Every medical advancement where an Indian doctor is probably involves research from American, German, or anything. But where is it something coming straight out of India? All the satellites that we launch and everything definitely have an international research in there. So check what are the contributions. When you ever, I'm sure people will go to India. When you go to India, check out this place. It's called Dr. Ambedkar Park in Lucknow. It's built as a magnificent monument for the Dalit struggles throughout the centuries. You'll find Dalit leaders in there. Why do you only need to see Taj Mahal? This is, I think, equally beautiful or even more beautiful, and it emphasizes a struggle for freedom.
That Indians marrying those outside of India, people from other countries, is that not allowed, or is that, how's that viewed?
Depends on what caste you are. When you are from the lower caste and you want to marry somebody outside your religion, outside your country or race, it's more or less accepted. If an upper caste person marries an upper caste have a greater need to maintain their caste thing. So if their kids marry outside of race or something, they'll have an issue. Down in Georgia, there was an Indian professor. He was a mathematics professor. His son married a black girl, and it didn't go well with the father. He paid $10,000 and got the black girl killed. And his reasoning was the family stock was going down because of what this boy did. He was the third boy, or he was the third child or the youngest child. So when you ever pick any Indian guys or gals to date, ask them their caste. If they are from the upper caste, know that you'll be dumped pretty for sure. If they are lower caste, you have a better aspect ratio of settling down with them. Because for a lower caste person, I don't know, I don't care. I'm already an untouchable. What can you do? If I marry a black girl, you're a slave in America, or I'm still a slave in India. So I think I have a better deal. But if a Brahmin, so when Indians come here with their caste prejudice, if they have it and if they are not yet liberated, if they're liberated, I'm all for it. I would like to help. I would like to learn from them. But if they are not liberated, you need to see that when the skin color is darker, and when those dark colored people might be doing menial jobs like being a janitor or whatever, there might be some prejudice because most untouchables, not all, most untouchables are dark skinned and also do menial jobs. So I'm guessing that it's very easy for people to relate the same thing and kind of equate the blacks here and with the menial jobs to. They might treat other professors and other lawyers, mayors, politicians a little different. But that doesn't mean that you're seeing everybody as equal. You should be able to see a janitor and give them the same respect as you would give to President Obama. If Indians go and meet President Obama and say, see, we like black people, is that a representation of America? Is everybody a president? No, right? Anyways, did I answer your question?
So, if a Dalit marries someone from outside of India, are they still a Dalit? Is that caste still maintained even as more and more marriages spread outside of India?
The point here is the girl or the boy whom the Dalit marries is still an outsider. The question here is what happens to their kids? The first thing that needs to happen is, do these Dalits accept this person into their life? Or are they seeing them as somebody, do they want to dissociate with this person and the person he married? If they do accept, their kids, by virtue of having a Dalit parent, will just become Dalits.
As the population, the Indian population in the U.S. increases and like discrimination is more, you talked in Texas, discrimination, like who can enter certain temples. Do you see any issues like with the struggles of African Americans gaining equality? It was based on race, but do you see any differences in like getting laws against it because it's a religion thing?
I'll have to go back to an example in UK actually. See, for caste system to be effective, there should be enough people to practice it. If you just have 10 people practicing caste, then you are idiots. you don't want to merge into the society and enjoy. You don't want to go to the club, mingle, and sing, whatever. So for caste system to effectively make its presence felt, yes, the numbers need to be huge. So as Indians come in, if they don't do, because by virtue of their religion they'll bring caste system, eventually you will see issues over here if there are enough people of different castes here. Like for example, I am, let me go back to UK here, United Kingdom. They had a lot of Indians there because Britishers once ruled, they took slaves there, people went there for studies and stuff. To the extent that there is caste system practiced in UK. There is discrimination based on caste in UK, and there's a group called Caste Watch UK that looks to finding out what the discriminations or stuff. But the legislature of British government has been changed to include caste also as part of their statements. Like you can't discriminate based on race, sexual orientation, creed, religion that you follow, and caste. So yes, when more and more Indians come, and if they follow caste system, eventually American government will have to sit up and take notice of it. Like even with these cases that happened in Chicago and in Georgia and in other parts, I'm not sure if anybody is already gathering that information and making it consolidated, because for it to be clearly seen as an issue, there should be enough occurrences. So if nobody is capturing it yet, then they are missing out on a lot of early information that they. So my dad's a doctor, so I've learned some things from him. If you have a communicable disease, caste system I see it as a communicable disease, you do two things. First thing is, you fix the person who already has the disease, then you make sure that nobody else gets it. So India already has the disease of caste system. So it needs cleanup, and it's taking us forever, but we are working at it. The other thing is, how do we make sure that other countries where Indians settle don't get something like caste system? Because Indians will assimilate and then exclude. We will assimilate with the best of the class, and then we will then start intermarrying only within that group, and that is caste system pretty much. You assimilate everybody who is strong, who is great, who won't oppose you, and then you just keep intermarrying. That way, all the riches, all the economy, all the political strength, all the religious strength is kept within that group.
About those honor killings?
Yeah.
You said how there was, during the British rule, there was a lot of reform done. How has that not become, murder? And like in the United States, if that father were to kill, his daughter and her husband, the entire family could be charged with murder if they even knew that this was going to happen, or even like heard talk about it.
Yeah.
So if they were to like, you know, migrate to United States, I mean, an entire family could go to jail for one murder, where how is that not, you know, been established as a reform in India yet?
Okay, these honor killings are very new, I think. Only with the modern era, kids are intermingling a little more. Intermingling needs to happen before you can even fall in love and then elope with somebody. So intermingling is a little more modern phenomenon. So now younger kids want to emulate what they see in the movies, they want to fall in love and everything. Earlier, late 19th century or even during British time, castes were pretty firm. There were only arranged marriages at that time. But today, let's come to Indian law. Indian women lawyers are trying to project to the legislature that we need a law against Hindu honor killings. But in India, what I want to again go back to is what is the will of the people saying? Like for example, if I am in a neighborhood and you all are my neighbors and you know that I killed my daughter because she married somebody outside of the caste, the law is one thing. Maybe it will catch, maybe it will punish me for 5 years or something, not life, because I can always prove that I was intoxicated, I was under the emotional pressure of the religion or whatever. There are ways to even reduce your punishment, right? Not every murder begets a life sentence or even, I don't know if Indians hang anymore. I don't think we have corporal punishment. Recently we took it up. But the point I want to make here is, what law does is not so much of my concern than what the society thinks of me. And Indian society, when it looks at a parent who has killed their child, shrugs and says, well, what could the dad do? His daughter stepped the boundaries. So that's where Indian society is. Now when you come to the US, yes, in both cases, these people must have been persecuted here. I definitely know that the professor in Georgia who got the black lady killed was prosecuted. You can see his story on Dateline NBC. It's called Justice for Sparkle. Sparkle was the name of the black girl. So you can see that. So yes, they are persecuted. But what I want to show you here is, it doesn't matter to that person who got that lady killed. I know death sentence is a huge deal, but what you need to do is see what it is in comparison. His death sentence is in comparison to him upholding the law of religion. A female feticide, you can even see that in the US. Indian immigrants will get their child aborted even when they're in the US. You would think they're educated, they have left the country and stuff, but they still do that. The question here is, what gives this person, a parent, power over their children, power to kill their children? Religion does. You can go back to, if you're a Christian, go back to your Bible and see. Deuteronomy is a book of Moses, laws of Moses given to his people. In those he has statements, I'm going to paraphrase, I'm not going to remember exactly. He says, don't do what those pagans do. In their folly, they kill their own children. What did Abraham do? He was ready to kill his own son. Why? Because God asked. He did stop him from doing it, but he asked and he was ready. This is exactly what happens with Hindu parents when they kill their kids. It doesn't matter anymore if you're a kid or whatever. If I and my family is my body, you have suddenly become a cancerous growth. By virtue of you marrying somebody else, you have become a cancerous tumor. I gotta slash you off. There's no other way to mitigate that.
How does support, like, from us help? Like, do they want out of the system, or like, if they're happy with the system, how will change happen?
The question is, who is happy with the system? Are the Brahmins happy with the system, or are the Dalits happy with the system, and who are the ones suppressed? Dalits are not happy with the caste system. But of course, yes, they are divided and stuff. The biggest thing which we need to do in India is to unite them, but we don't want this caste system. And what Dalits and lower castes need to realize is that the first thing they need to do is figure out what religion they want to follow. Do they want to follow a religion of caste, or do they want to denounce it and move on with their lives? What I'm trying to see here is, when this does occur in future, when all the lower castes do group up and say, okay, we are done being oppressed, we want to assert our rights of law and everything, they can take constitutional method. Constitution is already set for an equal, socially equal society, not just a political democracy. Constitution is set right for the social democracy. they can follow democratic methods and do that. But what we are trying to, what I'm trying to do is external support, international support will always help. The other way Indians can take is a non-constitutional method. They can do an uprising, like in Arab, Egypt or whatever. The question then the outside world will have is, why are these Indians on the roads? If it was in Egypt, we can say that they were fighting for democracy, they were trying to get the dictator out. In India, when you see people on the street fighting for it, you'll question, you guys have been claiming that you have the world's largest democracy by virtue of population. We have 1 billion people and we follow democracy. Then what are you fighting? Democracy. When it comes to India, all of them, if I say in one single statement, are all in the power of the upper castes still. These are all links behind them. You can go and look into what they are. Judiciary, all of the Supreme Court judges are Brahmins, are upper caste. Press, at least 90% of the press is in the upper caste. And by upper caste, I mean Brahmins of Hindu religion. And then you could see representation from Christians, Muslims, and everybody. But you need to realize that there are upper castes in there too. So when you say that there is 4% representation in the media by Christians, pretty much assured that they are upper castes in there. My question here is, you are asking people to rise above and be equal. The question I have is, why are you fundamentally injecting caste system and then requesting people to rise above it? Like Kishan and his family seem to have been liberated. They want to be beyond unequal and they are willing to accept. One family, another family. How many families do I need to find, or should I go to the root of the problem? Why do you want to stay as a, at least for the lower caste, why do you want to stay as a Hindu? Why do you want to, by virtue of staying a Hindu, why do you want to accept that superior chain on top of you? And then expect that those upper castes individually, by family, will rise up to the occasion and say, hey, we'll treat you equal, we'll treat you equal. How many people think that, here think that the society follows religion because they are aware of what religion does, and how many follow just because they are brainwashed and just like cattle? What you're asking for here is, most people who follow religion for the sake of like a cattle herd, don't have a say. They follow what religion preaches. You can't expect them to rise above and do something beyond what religion prescribes. Be open. You can't ask these people who follow religion blindly to accept social values as more important than religious values. They'll always plaster religious values on you. So that's where my concern is. If you don't clean up that group of people who always base religious values, and then just count on those progressive individuals to rise above the social values, then you'll have a tough time cleaning up the society. You might have individual families which will accept inter-caste marriages and not kill their kids. You'll have individual families accept marriages outside the race. You have individual families which will let Dalits enter their house, help them, treat them as kids. But you're talking 160 million people that need to be accrued into the society, brought back into the society.